Hello, Sebastian here from Twin Peaks. In this last video, we will now take a look at the compression zone area. If the terms order block and breaker block mean anything to you, then you're already relatively close here, because what we can calculate here are actually zones in which we can see strong compressions and to which we can then expect a reaction if necessary. Once we open this up here, bar value mode is off for the time being. You can also see the respective tooltip here. So determine here whether the smaller or larger bar should be used to draw a zone. What is meant here? Let's look at two bars that are in opposite directions. For example, this bearish bar and this bullish bar. And we can now choose whether we want to define the larger or the smaller as our future zone. Let's take the smaller one as a test. If we go to smaller, a very large menu opens up here, which we can continue working with. Value mode. Here we can select whether we are looking at bar or body. In other words, we view the entire bar here or just the body as a later zone. I'm just going to leave this at bar and look at this completely. We have a smaller value ratio here. This means that these two bars are compared with each other and only if the ratio of the small for the big corresponding to is valid. Only then is it used. This means that if we set it to 100%, then the smaller one can have up to 100% of the larger one. If we now set this to 50% as a test, for example, then the smaller bar may have a maximum of 50% of the larger bar. We leave this in for the test. We can't see anything yet because we have to refresh the whole right away. 2001. Then we have the option of create mode. Here we can choose between bar, ticks, and both. Bar means that after this bar here, as many, in this case 5 more must be created so that this zone is valid at all. So we can also see here that there was a reaction and the price is moving away. I can actually set here from 1 to infinity. If I set the whole thing to ticks, then this means that this tick number must move away from here so that a zone is formed here. If I set this to both, then I can choose here whether and or happens in between, means simply on and. Then I have to be 5 bars and 100 ticks away. Bad on or then accordingly here are 100 ticks or 5 bars. I'll leave it at or for now so that we can move on. Direction mode is also a very exciting function because the bars that move away from the price should all have the same direction as the zone. So for a buy zone, bullish; for a sell zone, bearish. Means if we have a corresponding buy zone here, i.e. a support zone, the candles that form here should then run away from it in the same direction, i.e. the same or in the opposite direction. We can set this here and we will leave it set to same. Otherwise, value must be larger, smaller. Simply means that the bars that follow here must form a higher high or a higher close in this case so that they are counted as bars. So if we have nested bars here, then this does not count. Here too, we can set the minimum and maximum size of the zone. So here from 5 pot to 60 ticks, zones would apply. In break mode, we can now say support or resistance, or support and resistance. This means that if we have support or resistance, we form a zone here as soon as this is broken once and the release is below. This is invalid. If we have this set to and resistance, then the zones are each converted once in the opposite direction. We'll see that in a moment. We'll leave it here for now. Otherwise, min tick to break simply means if such a zone is formed here, it is broken. By how many ticks must the close behind it take place so that this zone is considered broken? So that we can see something for now, let's leave everything exactly as it is and press F, SOS, EOS, so that things are calculated in the background. And then we can already see that all the conditions are met here. I'll do this again here and here we can see that this bar has at most 50% of the previous ones. So that's correct. And then we have moved 5 bars or 100 ticks away. And you can already see here in this darker shade. From here, from this point, the condition was met, meaning we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars behind it and no 100 ticks. But in this case, 5 bars here at Barclays, and then the zone only really became visible in the chart. Here at the other points, here for example, the condition is not fulfilled. And we look further. Here the condition would be fulfilled everywhere where these zones now arise. So here too the condition is fulfilled that we want to have between this bar and this bar. So this is drawn accordingly, but only from here, from this bar onwards, because that was basically 1 here. 1, 2, 3, 4th. But why? Let's now measure how many ticks that is. From here to up here, we can see that it was 109 ticks. The price had moved over 100 ticks away here, and so this zone was use invalid. So also quite exciting. Already here again, here we had the whole thing then just in the opposite direction. Means here then these 2 bars were then considered here with each other, and that was just small enough. And then the price here has moved far enough away, and from here was then just this 100 tick threshold, because we definitely didn't have 5 bars in the same direction. And then the whole thing developed from here. Now let's switch here to support and resistance. Reload once with F. Then we will immediately see that some zones are transformed here when they are broken. Here we have a nice example. This zone is broken here once because we now have the close here below the zone, which would actually end it. And from this point here, we have again fulfilled all the conditions, i.e. we have moved far enough away from the zone, either on the basis of the bar number, or then it has ticks. And here the zone has now emerged as a resistance zone according to, I'll see if we can still see it here somewhere. Here we have it again, I'll make it a bit bigger. Here too, we initially had resistance at this area here, and it then turned into support. But then, there was also a market impulse here, a very strong one, and then this has been transformed accordingly. Let's take another look to see if we have a few more examples. This is now only ending here in the 5-minute chart. Exactly. That is also important to understand. This zone here, which is then broken here once, is called Klaus above, but we are not going far enough upwards for this to become a supportive buy zone. Here we can see that quite well. The zone also holds very comfortably here. And I look again, here we have another zone that is converted. So here, this zone remains here for the time being, several remain here, and are then broken here once. And here, relatively quickly, with 100 ticks down. And then, this is converted here accordingly into a resistance zone. Here again, from this point here, where this shade becomes darker, from then on, the zone is created and converted. This has been, and we also see a very nice reaction to it, this classic order block breaker block principle. So I have these possibilities here in this area. I can also have them displayed. Then accordingly, until where they should run or from what time it is drawn in. And again, there are many graphical setting options. Show middle line, simply the center line within the zone, which is important for orientation for many people. And is visible from bar index, which is simply this function here with this darker shading. Use and that you can also see from when the bar was visible or the zone was visible. And again, there are lots of graphical setting options. Then we now close it once. And here we also have the option, us in the Pro version. So ZoneFinder Pro to display the corresponding signals here if we want to. Either only for support or only for resistance or for both. I'm going to assume both. Usand. And we then have options here to configure a wide range of scenarios. On the one hand, we have the bar level direction mode. Here we can then see whether bars that are approached by both types of bars, i.e. bullish and bearish, can be approached accordingly or only one of them. Created here on different means if there is a support zone here, then only if it is approached by a bearish bar. So you can also orientate yourself a little on the colors, simply different colors, red on green or green on red. That's what it means. We can also define different bar sizes here, i.e. how large the bar may be at most and how large it may be at least, so that a signal is generated. Otherwise, we have come up with a concept for resistance and support zones. So the resistance zone is always red and the support zone is always green. How we can calculate signals here, we simply compare a value of the bar. Let's take this red bar here as an example and compare the open, high, low, or close, or the open, odd, lows, high, or low. This is intended for special applications. We compare one of these values accordingly with the upper and lower edge of 2001 of these zones. Now that we're looking for resistance, let's look for a red zone where I can clearly show you that. Here I can indeed show you that. Here you will find a green bar on a red zone. And now we want to say, for example, that we want to generate a signal here if this close occurs within this specific zone. To do this, our close must first be set. Once we set the close, the bar must be greater than, here we have different operators, greater than the low, for example. So low here means the low of this zone. We can always go to lower or upper levels. With offset, we can still decide whether we want to move this area upwards, ensuring we definitely dive deep here. 2001, just as an example. And then we have the second one here, because I say here again, but the close should now be smaller than the upper level. So this area here should be smaller than this, because then I make sure that the close of the bar is within this zone. And we do exactly the same for support, for the support zone as an example. We now say that the close of the bar Y should also be smaller than the upper level, i.e. this here. And at the same time, the close of the bar should be greater than the lower level, i.e. right here in between. Now I press F once, and then the calculation is performed again in the background. It takes a moment, and we now see everywhere where this occurs. So where we have the close always within the bar, also there, 2001, we then see a signal marker here. And we can then either use these signals in Sentinel or actually here via NinjaScript if you want to build your own strategy, then you can evaluate these signals there. And you actually have many, many options here as to how you can design the whole thing as a signal in order to support your everyday trading, your trading strategy, and perhaps also generate signals here, which then give you alerts and notify you when such zones are approached. These are the functions of this compression zone function and also of our ZoneFinder tool. I hope that this tool provides you an advantage and that you can work effectively with it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us by email or Instagram, whichever is more convenient for you. We will then try to provide the best possible support here. See you next time. You Sand.